So our day begins bright and early. We are getting a lift as far as the Red Cow with Usheen, and then rendezvousing with Owen. So kind of running risks here. There's always the chance that Usheen is like, sure, I'll collect you, and then drives on by, or we get to the Red Cow waiting on Owen and he's just driving by chuckling to himself. But those are the risks we have to take. I'm pretty sure I have everything that I need. Probably should have watched my what to bring to tournaments video again, just to make sure. So today I am playing Noise and Palana foods. Gotten a bit of practice with both. Feeling comfortable with the decks. Of course, the last time I said that, I got blown out of the water, so you know, we're not getting to get too ahead of ourselves. But it should be a fun day out. Looking forward to the regional. Never been up to the north to meet up with the lads up there, so you know, it's about time that I did. One exciting thing as well is that the games are going to be recorded, or some of the games are going to be recorded at least, and there's going to be a photographer wandering around the place as well. So maybe I'll be internet famous, but at least I might be able to link a couple of games that I've played, because we all know that I'm useless for recording them, so at least there might be proof of, hey, I did appear in this tournament, this is exactly how things went. So as soon as those kind of videos go up, I will let you know, send you on the links, and yeah, it should be fun for all. Right, let's hit the road, get this day started. Well, we've arrived, we've made the trek. Took about 2 hours, which wasn't too bad, and there's a good old turnout. I think there's 20 something at this stage, so should be 4 rounds of Swiss, I hope, and a couple from over the water as well, so it's going to be a serious day out. Competition looks pretty fierce, prizes look amazing as you've seen, and now the nerves are starting up, and I'm kind of going, did I make the right deck choices? Time will tell. What's up guys, it is very late. We have made it back to Dublin in one piece. Going to do a full recap of the day tomorrow, or in a couple of minutes for you, but just wanted to say that it was a great day out. I was involved in and got to watch a lot of really interesting, really entertaining games. Got to meet a great bunch of people, including a couple that came over the water from the UK, and big shout out to Az and Tracy and all the other organisers as well. The day went really smoothly, everything was really well organised, everyone was taken care of well, good rulings, very fair, concise, and yeah, just overall great experience. I know I must get some shut-eye because it is very late, it's a very taxing day between the hours and the play itself, but I'll fill you all in the next clip. So, well, it's a brand new day. I've had time to rest, recover a little bit, and think about what I've done, we'll say. I have my little cheat sheet here. I decided yesterday to take notes because I find that when I'm trying to do emails to friends, or you know, even this little recap, that I find it very difficult to remember exactly what happened in some games, and then there's sometimes I'll just go, oh, and I think this happened, but I don't know. So to give yourself and myself a clearer indication as to what actually happened on the day, I jotted down a few little points and notes. So let's go on to the recap of regionals in Bangor. First game was up against Oren, playing against his biotech deck first, which I played against online once, and I've seen a couple of times as well from spectating games. This is one that I was quite nervous about. Biotech can really punish you if you're a little sloppy. If you make one mistake, it can be game ending. I tried to keep on top of things pretty well. I was sniping off a couple of agendas, putting myself in a pretty good position, I think. He motioned out a future perfect, and I let him have it. I'm not brave enough on the motions, unfortunately, and that could have cost me. I did get turntable down, stole a GFI, which I dutifully swapped for that future perfect to give myself an extra couple of points. So things were going quite well. I think it was 5-4 at one point, and that is when I psyched myself out. I was keeping up good pressure. I don't think he could keep me out of servers, but he decided to go with the good old-fashioned mind games. He motioned out a card and advanced it once. So my choice is either run it and hope it's an agenda, or lose the game. Or lose the game by not running it if it is an agenda. So it's a tricky position to be in. I decided to check R&D first and didn't see anything of use. And then I left that motioned card. He scored it to win the game, and I've been doing that kind of, the chart in my head, the little matrix of, if he motions out the card and I do run it and it's an agenda, I score and I win. If it's a trap, he flips his ID and I lose. From his position, he doesn't necessarily lose if it's a trap and I don't run it. I don't know. I've been trying to and fro and back and forth in my head, trying to work out what the best course of action would be to do, and I have no idea. If you have any idea which I should have done, let me know. Obviously I did the wrong thing because of how it turned out, but there wasn't enough influence there to rule out a cerebral. Yeah, that's a tough one. The return fixture then was Palana up against Leela, and my Palana deck is supposed to be, you rush pretty fast, you use Grail to make sure that they can't run too easily, and you keep them down like that. But against Leela, you have to change that tactic. You have to allow for a bit more setup time, make sure you're double iced everywhere, if not triple iced in some places, and he was able to use that to his advantage. He was playing the Gang Sign Leela version, so I had to make sure that HQ was pretty clear as well. So at one point I did get quite flooded, but obviously couldn't push for scores then because it would absolutely ruin me. So took my time, got Jackson down, cleared the hand, and kind of reset in a way. But then when I thought I had an opportunity to push for a score, I just couldn't draw an agenda to save my life. We were heading for time. I think it was 4-3. Obviously my notes aren't thorough enough, but I put down an agenda that would have given me a timed win. I had just enough time to be able to get onto my turn and score it out. And then he went with his alternative Leela tactic, which was try to siphon me, but I stopped it. He had deal lower on board, so I knew kind of what was coming, so I had to make sure that stopped with the Nisei token. But he got Paparazzi down, milled twice, and ran Archives. Winning agenda was there, so unfortunate, but them's the break sometimes. But that's not where the story ends, unfortunately for Oren, who may be watching this video. A couple of rounds later, I was playing a game, and the judge came over to me and saying that there was a deck check conducted, and it's found that he was playing over influence. It was something he would have been nervous about anyway, but that's understandable when there's random deck checks. You don't want to lose a game because of it. Unfortunately, he didn't account for a levy that he had in there, that he just hadn't drawn in quite a few games actually, and had kind of forgotten about. So I don't know if it would have made a difference, but there are the rules. It's a shame, unfortunately, that it had to end that way. Puts a dampener on what was a great game. He deserved the win, but what can you do? Game 2, I was up against Owen from Cork, and also my lift, so I couldn't piss him off too much. He'd also gone down 2-0, which was a surprise both to himself and most of the field there, I'm sure. But Damien, he's been coming on strong the last couple of tournaments. He's really finding his form at the right time, brought really solid decks that he pilots very, very well. And yeah, he's been on an upward rise for a while. Came at the perfect time for him, not so much for me because Owen ends up in my bracket. It's like Damien didn't even think of how this kind of play affects other people. How selfish. So fortunately and unfortunately, I've had the pleasure of playing Owen a couple of times. We actually talked at lunch after the fact, and you know, he made a good point, and I've kind of said it myself as well, that it's good to get the experience against, you know, the players you expect to see in top 4, because if you are hoping to challenge for tournament wins, they are the people you're going to see in the cut, so you need to get as much experience playing them as possible. So I was running against Palana first, Noise versus Palana, classic matchup. I was very hesitant to run, I was quite slow to set up as well. I knew he was playing Grail, we've played a couple of times in the past, so I didn't get my setup as I would have liked, but I kept up the pressure then with Parasite and Imp and things like that. Once I got a little bit set up, once I felt I could run a little bit more with Mimic out and Faust, for example. Unfortunately, I had binned my Corroder earlier in the game, and then Ashigaru ended up on the scoring server. Came down to him going for a push, and I was pretty much out of time. I mean, my options were Deja Vu for Corroder and try that way, but I was a little bit poor. He had Caprice and the Nisei token as well backing him up, I could try Parasite and Data Sucker, but there just weren't enough runs in the day, unfortunately. Tried to hit R&D a couple of times, but things were a bit sparse. And unfortunately, after the game, he revealed that he had a couple of agendas in hand. And again, my unwillingness to run HQ came back to bite me. I had Yogg on the table. Merlin wasn't going to cause an issue with Data Sucker out. Mistakes were made. I have said a couple of times that HQ is kind of my blind spot. It's a server I often don't attack unless I have an imp on the board. But that's definitely something I need to rectify, definitely something I need to look at, and try to apply more even pressure across the board. The reverse fixture then was Haley once again being broken out against my Palana, which is also running Grail, so quite similar there. But this is where the experience of having played Owen, and Owen's Haley in particular, has paid off. I was definitely much more aggressive. I was willing to just slam agendas in and go for it. I was leaving HQ wide open, but I felt I had to push, I had to pressure early, make sure that he couldn't get as set up, because then Haley's just relentless. But that approach definitely paid off. I was able to get the first Nisa out unchallenged, and that kind of is able to snowball a little bit, get the corporate sales team out with a Clones Are Not People, which is fantastic. That's the combo I've been going for, and that meant that I could just go for a 4-2 as my last score as well. Sure enough, the 4-2 arrived. He made a couple of good efforts at the scoring server. I was texting Brahman, David, everything that I could basically. Psy games, using Nisei tokens, just everything. It was a dramatic last turn, but in the end just held out and was able to score it out. He later said that he had been drawing for his one-off political operative, and with a wide open HQ it would have been plain sailing from there, but thankfully luck was on my side, and sometimes fortune favours the brave. Now funnily enough, we actually met down at like table 10, which I think is unknown territory for him. I haven't seen it all that often, thankfully. Maybe that's just because the tournament's been too small, but let's not go into it. Anyway, hopefully we can meet again on higher tables in a tournament in the very near future. They're always good games, and as I said, great experience to play against the better players, even though it means your road to top 8, top 4 and victory is much more difficult. On to game 3 then. Unfortunately I didn't catch his name, but I had seen him playing just on the table beside me. So to my right there was an Industrial Dynamics deck, and I was praying so hard that I wouldn't have to play it. But round 3 pairings went up after lunch, and sure enough, I was playing against Industrial Dynamics. I think he was a slightly newer player, so there were some mistakes that he made. I think he was too enthusiastic about the idea of putting this remote servers full of death and destruction, just snares everywhere. I don't think he held on to enough threatening pieces. I didn't see like Bioethics Association or Shocks either, so it made the game a little bit less stressful and taxing than it had to be. Unfortunately it still went quite long. I think the game took 40-45 minutes in total. I survived a couple of hairy turns. There was one where he scored a Philotic and hit me for 3 damage, but I had a couple of I've had worse. So yeah, I've had worse. I was able to survive, just a flesh wound.
Now stand aside, worthy adversary.
'Tis but a scratch.
A scratch? Your arm's off.
No, it isn't.
Well, what's that then?
I've had worse.
But it was scary. I decided to just keep going R&D and Archives and HQ, because HQ was wide open. R&D was quite easy to get into, and Archives was as well, and I wasn't too concerned about Shocks. So they were kind of my avenues of attack, and it paid off in the end. Did manage to get the win, but yeah, it was hairy sometimes. On the flip side, he was playing Jasminder, but I don't think he utilised her ability completely in avoiding tags. Wasn't playing the usual Siphon Vamp that you see, and instead was kind of going for Beach Party, Game Day, getting massive hands up and getting Faust on the board. And again, I was rushing just as fast as possible basically. A, because I was playing against a Shaper that I didn't want to get set up and get all powerful, and B, because I had 20 minutes to try and finish this game basically. I had been very bold at times as well. He had left himself a little poor. I had Ashgar on the scoring server. What a piece of ice, huh? The MVP of the day. And I was just trying to go for agendas behind that. Didn't even have Caprice on the board, but was basically just slamming agendas and hoping for the best. That was paying off. I was definitely getting my agendas scored. I think I was up to 5 or 6 points. He had gotten a global food out of my hand, unfortunately. And then time was called. So it was my turn, so I had a couple of draws in me. So drew, no agenda, drew, no agenda. And then I realised you just have to ice R&D and make sure that you don't give up the goods there and end up, turning a time to win into a loss. So another piece of ice went up there, Assassin, something big and beefy, and Caprice went at the bottom as well, and I think Batty was there as well. I think I just threw everything into R&D possible because I knew I couldn't score out, so I just had to defend what I had. He went for a Maker's Eye run, and I left him too poor at the end to be able to contest, so I was able to just stop the run and take a timed win. Not ideal, but better than a loss. It was at this point as well that I got the news about the added game win from the first game, so I was kind of bumped up the rankings a bit, and it also meant that I had a little bit of hope going to my last game. I had just 4 rounds of Swiss before I cut to the top 8, so needed to get 2 wins out of the last game. My last game, possibly the most important of the day, was up against Ewan, who came all the way over from Glasgow, which was pretty cool to see. Having gone to Edinburgh, I was kind of filled in that Scotland, it seems, wants to kill you, and they said that Glasgow in particular, they want to kill you. PE was the identity sitting across from me, so if you needed any more proof that death was on hand, or at a moment's notice you could die, kind of got the dream start as Noise, and I was able to put on good pressure across the board. I was really happy with how things were starting up. Unfortunately, all the agendas I was dealing were fetals, so it meant that I had to draw up pretty well. Got 1 from archives, which wasn't too bad. It means you avoid the damage, but the other 2 were fetals, so had to do it the hard way, take 3 damage, draw back up, and chill out for a little bit. But there came a moment where the cogs were turning in his mind very visibly. He wasn't entirely sure if he could pull it back, but he decided to go for the avenue of attack that was open to him. Went for an early MP, thankfully hit one of my 2 I've had worse in hands, so I was able to draw up nicely and survived the kill that he had planned. I had seen Punitive as well and some other shenanigans that would have caused massive issues, but thankfully I've had worse. Still a great card, and that is why Selim's Hospitality is so powerful at the moment. In the end, I managed to close out the game 7-1. He had a profiteering on board. He was moneying up. PE doesn't really care about bad publicity. You're not going to be breaking ice that much, it seems. They're just going to be having traps everywhere. And then came the game that may make you reach for the unsubscribe button, in a case of there's no hope for him, he'll never get there, he'll never win, he'll never be top 4, top 8. But please don't. So he's playing Max up against Palana, and it was exactly what you expect Max to be. There were siphons, he got a keyhole down pretty early, but I was expecting that element of it, and threw down a assassin and toll booth on R&D, made sure that that couldn't be much of a threat, and it was basically weathering the storm. There was tons of siphons coming in, Deja Vu siphon, same old thing siphon, just everything that you could get pretty much. He got up to 5 points quite early on, but then Max bit him in the ass. Max did what Max does. All the recursion ended up in the bin. From there he was left with the 4 cards in hand, I think, with which to try and close out the game. I took full advantage of this. I was sticking agendas in. Again, no protection behind it, just hoping for the best pretty much. Install advance. But unfortunately I kept drawing agendas, so I would install advance and then I'd have to advance and then just install an agenda awkwardly. Wasn't what I hoped for. Galahad was protecting HQ for a while, but then he got his corroder down and started poking, and of course I'd have an agenda in hand that I was just praying and hoping that he wouldn't hit. Survived so many scares where he'd see a Merlin and kind of go, oh yeah, of course, you know, Merlin in hand. Seen that. But little did he know there was an agenda sitting there pretty much every time. Got to 6 points as awkwardly as I could get. Drew the last agenda again, stuck it, advance. Was doing this the hard way, clones and not people did not show up, 5-3 did not show up. But unfortunately, before I could get that agenda scored, I drew another one, and this is where my fateful error occurred. I got tunnel vision. I could have stopped the pressure so much earlier, because if you're playing Grail, what pieces do you have? Typically, like Merlin, Lancelot in hand, and did he have a way of dealing with it? Aside from Eater, no, and he was also quite poor. Keyhole wasn't going to be an issue. But what did I do? Instead of pushing my luck once again by holding onto the agenda and hoping that he didn't come HQ a ton of times, I stuck it in archives. Instead of sticking a Lancelot on HQ, instead of holding onto it, yep, just threw it away. And sure enough, this is the one time that he ran archives thinking, you know, maybe he stuck one in there earlier in the game, not realising it would be, you know, the last turn of the game. I res crick, he let it fire, no Jacksons or anything to save me, so I put the agenda out naked. He used 2 clicks to check it, I used 2 D-set tokens to stop him, and he ran it again and scored. Even talking about it now, saying it out loud, it's ridiculous. I've had a 2-hour journey from the north to process it, all of last night, all of this morning, just reflecting on it, thinking about it, talking to people after the tournament, just every time I tell it, that story, it just gets more and more ridiculous. I was like, oh, why? All I had to do was hold on to the agenda or stick a piece of ice in front of HQ, and that's it. The game is done. I had a good chance of top 8. I mean, I'll put up the final standings here. Fortunately I couldn't capture the full screen, timer was in the way, but here's how it all finished up. And if you add on 2 points for a win in a final game, that puts me top 8. It actually hurts so much. I mean, talk about clutching defeat from the jaws of victory. You can't get much worse than that. I've said I've made stupid errors on jinteki.net and in my broadcast games, but this is one that'll be hard to live down. I definitely won't make it again. I hope, God. If I make it again, I'm giving up on Netrunner altogether. But it was just one of those things where panic set in or fatigue set in. The mind went and I wasn't thinking clearly. There wasn't even a decision made. It was tunnel vision definitely set in. I was just kind of focused on scoring out agendas, not thinking of I could do this to prevent losing. I don't know. So instead I had to sit and watch top 8 play out, look at all the people collect their fancy playmats that I really wanted. But thankfully there was a lot of great games on show. Congratulations to Ben, another representative from Cork. Definitely provided a lot of entertainment throughout his top 8 games as well. Definitely approaches the game in the right fashion. You'll see a lot of the videos up on Azrael's channel. I'll link it below. You'll see them then as they go up once he puts commentary over them and everything, and you might hear some of Ben's antics throughout the matches as well. There is a little more to talk about from the weekend, but I'll save that until Friday. Make sure I have something to talk about. And I'm going to leave the vlog here. Unfortunately I have to edit it, which means I have to listen to that story against Ewan once again. It's going to be a hard watch for me, I can tell you that. But thank you very much for watching. Thank you for not unsubscribing, hopefully. And hopefully I can do you proud at some point in the future and not make one of these horrific errors once again. Thanks guys.